Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we will continue our Guan Yu's Last Dance lore series with episode 5 titled The Wu Involvement. Now we ended our last episode with Guan Yu's astonishing victory over Yu Jin's forces north of the city of Fan, or better known as the flooding of the Seven Armies. As a result, Cao Cao considered relocating the Han Emperor from Xuchang, but with Sima Yi and Jiang Ji staunchly against this plan, on the grounds that showing weakness now might spark even more defections of Han loyalists, such as Hu Xiu and Fu Fang, who just recently defected to Guan Yu's side. Instead, Sima Yi argued that perhaps they should now consider Sun Quan's alliance offer instead and rely on the Wu forces to halt Guan Yu's advances to the north. And when we mentioned this in the last episode, we stated that we will dedicate this entire episode here to document Sun Quan's involvement from the beginning, as this was no spur-of-the-moment decision. And if we go back to the year 215, after Sun Quan suffered his most humiliating military defeat at Hefei, the expansion strategy for Sun Quan started to shift from an eastern approach strategy to a Jin province strategy, with the dominant voice behind this shift being Meng, who argued that even if they are able to take Hefei, their prize would be a showdown in the Central Plains against Cao Cao's famed cavalry. Therefore, Meng argued that taking the Jin province is the better move, as it will allow them to play up their naval advantages and extend their control of the Yangtze River. Of course, opponents to this approach, led by Lu Su, argue that with Cao Cao being the dominant force in the land, the alliance with Liu Bei, who currently held the Jin province, is vital for their own survival. However, by 217, Lu Su would pass away at the age of 46, and immediately Lu Meng's plan was adopted by Sun Quan, as General Xu Xiang was sent to Cao Cao to discuss surrender terms, as Cao Cao had spent the majority of 216 attacking Ruxukou as revenge for Sun Quan's 215 attack on Hefei. And as part of Sun Quan's surrender terms here, he suggested a political marriage to cement their relationship. Now I'm mentioning this because this will become very important when we discuss Guan Yu in a little while, as Sun Quan will also suggest the same thing to Guan Yu prior to betraying him. But before we get there, let me first state that Sun Quan's proposal of political marriage to Cao Cao never materialized, in large part due to the fact that Sun Quan had nothing to offer in terms of offsprings. In 217, Sun Quan, who was 35, had two sons. Sun Deng, the oldest, who was 8, Cao Cao was 62 at this time, and old enough to be Sun Quan's father, which is why when Sun Ce had utilized political marriage as a means to stabilize relationship with Cao Cao in the past, he had to offer his younger brother Sun Quang's hand in marriage to Cao Cao's niece at the time. So in essence, Sun Quan had nothing to offer, and his marriage proposal is nothing but empty words. As in 219, just as Cao Cao was losing in Hanzhong, Sun Quan would launch another failed small-scale attack on Hefei, which did not even amount to a siege to be considered as one of his 5 failed siege attempts. Yet with another fruitless Hefei campaign coming to an end, all attention shifted this time to the Jin province strategy, as right when Guan Yu would launch his campaign in July, Meng would report back to Sun Quan that Guan Yu had left behind a significant defensive force on their borders, as it was clear that Guan Yu did not trust them after years of hostility between the two parties over the disputed land. So without an opening to attack, Meng suggested a ploy to drop Guan Yu's guard. Meng suggested that since it was a known fact that he was sickly and would often get sick, they could fake a serious illness that would require him to step down from his command post. And to better sell the story, he would even physically travel back to Jianye to give the appearance that he would need quite a long time to recover. And on this journey back, Lu Meng would also happen to pass by Lu Xun's encampment at Wuhu, where the two generals would meet. Now, at this time, Lu Xun was 36 and held the rank of the director of the Right Division, which was essentially the commander of Sun Quan's personal guards. And prior to holding his military role, Lu Xun, who hailed from the famous Lu clan of the Wu Commandery and the grandnephew of Lu Kang, was actually in charge of Tun Tian for Sun Quan after joining him in 203, when Lu Xun was just 21 years old. Then after showing promise as a civil official, Lu Xun also flashed military talent in putting down two separate Shangyue rebellions. And by 216, Sun Quan, who now saw a promising future for Lu Xun, ended up promoting him to lead his personal guards, while also setting up a marriage for him to his own niece, Lady Sun, who was the daughter of Sun Ce. And as an example to showcase his brilliance, when Lu Meng met Lu Xun here, Lu Xun, who did not know anything about faking the illness, immediately pointed out to Lu Meng that his absence on the front lines would spur Guan Yu to pull troops from the rear to assist his northern campaign, and that this was an opportunity for them, and Lu Meng should suggest a Jin province invasion to Sun Quan once he returns to Jianye. Shocked at his astuteness, Lu Meng would take mental note and eventually go on to suggest Lu Xun as his replacement in the Jin province to Sun Quan, as an extension of their ploy to get Guan Yu to drop his guards, as Lu Xun ended up being their secret weapon, as despite his brilliance, no one from outside of Wu have really heard much about him due to the fact that all his prior military experience had come from internal Shangyue rebellions. And indeed, once Lu Meng had returned to Jianye, Lu Xun was immediately let in on the whole ploy, as he was now assigned to take over for Lu Meng in the Jin province, and his first task would be to endear himself to Guan Yu in order to farther drop Guan Yu's guard. As following Lu Meng's departure, Guan Yu did not buy it at first, as he did not pull any of his rearguard to join the siege of Fan, despite being severely outnumbered as Cao Cao started to commit more and more reinforcement and resources into the defense of Fan and Xiangyang. So the first thing Lu Xun did after arriving in the Jin province was to write a personal letter to Guan Yu to express his admiration for the famed general, as he heaped praise after praise to Guan Yu's accomplishments before closing out the letter with a promise to never become Guan Yu's enemy. And after seeing such a letter, Guan Yu lost all respect for Lu Xun, as he felt regardless of whether the letter was genuine or not, such a shameless flatterer will not be a threat compared to the previous commander Lu Meng. So in August of 219, just prior to the flooding of the Seven Armies, Guan Yu actually pulled the majority of his defensive deployment at Jiangling and Gong'an to assist him in the north. Then just after scoring his victory over Yu Jin, Guan Yu received an envoy from Sun Quan that proposed a marriage between Sun Quan's son and Guan Yu's daughter. Now, there are many people who like to point out how Guan Yu cursed out the envoy and rejected this offer as one of the reasons for Sun Quan's betrayal, or at least a lost chance for Guan Yu to salvage the relationship with Sun Quan to prevent the future backstab. But I beg to differ. As we mentioned before, Sun Quan's oldest son, Sun Deng, was 8 in 217, and now in 219, he is 10. And though people married early back in those days, an early marriage meant 16, maybe 15. So this proposal, much like Sun Quan's offer to Cao Cao in 217, was nothing but another empty promise, and really just another attempt to try to drop Guan Yu's guard. And plus, with Lady Sun's prior marriage to Liu Bei, it would be quite awkward for Guan Yu, who is Liu Bei's sworn brother, to end up becoming in-laws with Sun Quan here, especially given the marriage ended poorly with the unhappy separation on both sides between Liu Bei and Lady Sun. And if anything, Guan Yu was probably waiting for his daughter to become old enough to marry one of Liu Bei's sons, as he had been fighting his whole life to help prop his sworn brother Liu Bei onto the throne. Thus, having his daughter cement that imperial connection only made sense. Also, much like the case with Cao Cao, Guan Yu was old enough to be Sun Quan's father, so I don't blame him for rejecting the offer, and I don't think this would have changed anything down the line, as this was never a genuine offer in the first place from Sun Quan, as Zhou Yu's daughter had always been the one destined to marry Sun Quan's eldest son. And with that cleared, we're going to end our episode here, as we'll return next time with the actual betrayal, as the fortunes of war would turn on Guan Yu on the northern front as well, with Xu Huang's arrival. So hopefully you enjoy this episode, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!